Originally, when I joined the band, it was a five-piece band. Everybody was part of this corporation called Eagles Limited. We all owned Eagles Limited. We shared equally in the. But when we got back together, Don and Glenn felt that they should get a much larger share.
Don Felder was fired from the Eagles because of cold facts. 20 years later, he spoke out. No more lying and keeping up a good front. He showed all the problems, the fights, the power struggles, the unfairness, and even the betrayal. One layer at a time. Felder no longer needs the Eagles at age 77, but he needs to be honest. He's not leaving anything out this time. Are you ready? If you think you know everything about the Eagles, think again. Ready for what's coming. When Don Felder joined the Eagles as a guitarist in 1974, he quickly changed the sound of the band. He not only gave the band a strong rock sound, but he also made the old country-influenced sound bigger. Felder brought more to the table than just moves. It gave the music a personality and a clear meaning. Later, it became the heart of the band's most famous guitar solo. The release of Hotel California in 1976 is an important event that can't be replaced. Felder played a simple demo on a 12-string guitar at home in Malibu that was the start of the band's idea. The long, well-known solo was a rare mix of technical skill and creative feeling. Felder's fans saw it as what made him who he was, but it also put him in the middle of a power battle he couldn't win. Outside of the public eye, there was a secret power system in the Eagles that Don Henley and Glenn Frey ran completely. They chose everything, from the direction of the songs to the set lists for the tour, to how the money would be split. Don Felder had no equal say, even though he co-wrote and played the hits. While the Eagles were known for working together, individual goals caused them to fight with each other, and worked more like a business than a band. Felder would not be quieted down. He began to ask things. So why did Henley and Frey get more of the money when they worked together to make it? Why did other members' creative plans keep getting turned down or tightly controlled? There was no answer to these questions. They were seen as threats instead. Many people said Felder was hard to work with, but the truth was that he was just trying to keep things fair in the band. The fight didn't end. Instead, it got worse, especially after the Eagles got back together in 1994. During the Hell Freezes Over period, Felder was still not involved in making financial choices for the band, but he was still playing with them. He was fired in 2001 because things got so bad. There was no meeting and no clear answer. It was just a cold facts warning. That event changed everything. Felder not only lost his job, but he also lost the right to claim a piece of the history he had helped made. In response, he went to court and sued Henley and Frey for breach of contract, unfair dismissal from the band, and failing to share income fairly. The case quickly got a lot of attention from the media and showed a side of the Eagles that no one had seen before. Felder went from being a creative partner to being a stranger. The way the band dealt with their disagreements showed a clear power structure. Henley and Frey kept running the Eagles as a brand, but Felder was called a chatty ex-member, even though he made contributions. The case was finally settled without going to court in 2007 after years of stress. No information was given about the amount of the settlement, but the disagreement was not about money. It was an honor. Felder didn't want to join the band again. He wanted to be seen as an important part of their past, and not be left out of the story he helped write. After Don Felder quit the Eagles and stayed out of the legal mess, he didn't go away. Heaven and Hell, My Life of the Eagles, 1974 to 2001, his autobiography, came out in 2008. It was a very detailed story from someone who was there. The book caused a lot of debate right away because it not only told stories from the past, but it also showed how the band had been manipulated, unfair, and unhappy for decades. It's easy to understand what Felder writes. He doesn't try to hide how angry he is or change the way he talks to avoid taking the credit. Each part shows how Glenn Frey and Don Henley held most of the power in the Eagles, while the rest of the band was slowly pushed to the side. No longer are these events personal to me. They are history records that show how competitive the workings of a famous band were. The book's effects went beyond the people who read it. It caused a reaction right away from the other side. Felder was accused of breaking his contract by giving out inside information by Don Henley and his lawyers. The Eagles' Countess sued, asking for money damages and to stop the release of some parts of the audiobook version of the biography. It wasn't about the music anymore in the fight. Whose story was told was at stake. Not only does the book protest, but it also helps Felder take back his place. He talks about everything, from group meetings where he wasn't heard to tours where he felt like he had two bosses instead of playing with his friends in a band. He often feels left out, and it shows up in both his work and his everyday life. Heaven and hell don't try to make Don Felder look good. He says in the book that he was angry, responded too quickly, and was so tired at times that he wanted to give up. But that admission makes the reader understand that the book isn't just about blaming other people. It's also about facing oneself. Felder writes with a wound that hasn't closed, and it shows. Thoughts were split. Some fans thought Felder was just digging up old stuff to get attention. But most people thought the memoir was important because it showed how famous bands work and how skill and fame aren't always rewarded with justice. Felder has said over and over in interviews since the book came out that he hid information. He said, "I didn't write it to hurt anyone. More weight would be added if I wanted to." Felder's words make it sound like he knew how important his story was and decided not to push it to its limits. Even though the book came out more than 10 years ago, Felder has stuck to his guns. In recent talks, he has stressed that heaven and hell are the truth from his point of view, no matter what. He doesn't avoid being responsible for saying what's on his mind, and he doesn't change his mind just to make someone else feel better. Heaven and Hell is more than just an artist's biography in terms of what it says. It tells the story of a famous band that was run like a business, where power rules over art. Felder talks about the exact cost of quiet and why he decided not to put up with it any longer. After the book came out, things between the members got worse than ever. Henley wouldn't say much more than that, admitting that he doesn't agree with what Felder wrote. Joe Walsh and David B. Schmidt stayed neutral and didn't directly deny or officially support the claim. Felder stayed calm. No one would know what really happened if he didn't say anything. Don Felder did not choose to stay quiet in the shadows forever, even though he was no longer with the Eagles. When the band's door shut, he didn't go back to try to find his old fame. Instead, he quietly walked forward, where he could tell his own story in the language he had known his whole life. Music. Job after leaving Eagles. Felder's first record as a solo artist came out in 2012. It wasn't a big deal that they tried to come back. Rather, it was reassurance that he could still write songs, play guitar, and run a music project though he chose to. The songs on the record were very personal. They were about loss, change, betrayal, and getting over things. It was more than just a studio work. After going through a breakup in quiet for more than a decade, he had been holding his music inside because he was going through a lot of emotional turmoil. After that hit, he put out American Rock and Roll in 2019. Rock legends like Slash, Mick Fleetwood, Sammy Hagar, and Chad Smith are on this record that spans generations. Felder not only showed that he could work alone, but also that he had won the respect of his peers by making a good product. He became the center of his own song when he was no longer controlled by anyone or anything. Felder has been on a steady tour schedule since 2010. He doesn't play on as many big stages as he did with the Eagles, but he still has a steady following at theaters, concerts, and classic rock shows all over the country. When Felder does those shows, Hotel California is always a big part of his set list. He spends a lot of time on new work, though, which is his way of saying that he is not stuck in one time period. Felder's career took another big turn in 2025, when the album The Vault came out. 50 years of music. This project is more than just a bunch of old records. This is an excavation of musical memories, with many carefully recorded, edited, and mixed demos that have not been shared yet. The album's songs are very different from one another. There are classic rock songs and sad, reflective tunes. Steve Lukather, David Page, and Joseph Williams of Toto are among the guests on the record, which shows that Felder is still respected by his peers and is ready to work on serious art projects with him. Felder has spent a lot of time on education and community service, in addition to his music business. He has led workshops on playing the guitar, been on panels about writing and singing, and backed free music education programs for kids. Felder sees music as more than just a way to make a living. This helps him stay in touch with the younger age and shows that music is important to him. Felder had an accident in the middle of Tequila Sunrise in February 2025 while performing on the rock legend's ship. After being taken off stage, he was taken to the closest hospital. At first, it was thought that the cause was extreme dehydration caused by the bad weather. After taking it easy for a few days, Felder sent a message to fans to comfort them that he was okay and would be back on stage as soon as possible. That being said, this event made it very clear that at 77 years old, his health isn't what it used to be, and that he has to be more careful about how he looks. The interesting thing is that Felder has never used getting older as a reason for not being as productive. He's still recording, writing, and going to important events to show that his voice still has weight, not to stay in the spotlight, but to show that it does. He no longer needs the Eagles to make a living in singing, more than 20 years after leaving them. He stays alive because he stays alive and chooses not to stop, laying down memories one by one. Today, Don Felder doesn't seem upset about the past, but he hasn't said anything about it in 20 years, not because he has forgotten, but because he wants to take a different approach. Felder started to talk more about his inner self and how he felt after the war in interviews in 2024 and 2025, and why he doesn't want to start a new war when he still has enough information to do so. He once said that getting kicked out of the Eagles was a good thing. What I said may sound like a simple thing, but it was a process of untangling myself. Felder didn't see leaving a place where everyone made decisions as a loss. Instead, he saw it as a way to regain his worth. He ended the time when he understood the difference between following orders and helping others. Felder tried to make peace with Glenn Frey after he was fired, but Frey didn't answer. He went to the memorial service for Frey in 2016 after he died and spoke to the media in a polite way. In a recent interview, Felder said again, "I'm not happy that Glenn died, but I'm not going to act like we were friends. We had a space between us that will never be filled." There is no anger in this comment. It's an honest acceptance of the truth. When it came to Don Henley, their connection stayed quiet and far away. When they did meet at music events, which didn't happen very often, they were polite. Felder never went after Henley in public after the death of Glenn Frey, who was his closest working partner. "That was in the past," he said. "There are still things I don't agree with about how Henley ran the band. I choose to live right now." In that comment, there was no retreat. There was a setting of limits. Felder doesn't talk about his fights over and over again to get attention like he did when he first published his book. What he tells the world is not all the time. Instead of focusing on drama, he writes about what it's like to live through pain. He told AZ Central, "I don't forgive to make them feel better. I let go of the grudge so I don't have to carry it anymore. It's not about the other person when you forgive them. It's about choosing to stop feeling bad emotions over and over again. Felder also talks about the mental side of living in a creative space where people's skills aren't properly honored in his seminars and workshops. His words describe it as a kind of hidden burnout. Felder's advice for young artists is more than just about how to play music well. It's also about being independent and keeping your own identity when dealing with people who have different personalities. In 2020, Felder started to show up on music TV shows more often. There are in-depth podcasts and films about rock history. He has taken a clear stand in all of them. He doesn't try to hide what happened, but he also doesn't use it against people. Felder isn't afraid to talk about the times he's been harmed, but he also doesn't try to judge everyone else. His words are more powerful because they come from someone who has been through it, not someone who just wants to repeat it for the sake of glory. Journalists have often tried to find out things that haven't been said. Felder stays away, though. He knows that his viewers might be interested, but he also knows that respect starts with being in charge of the story. He says, "I don't want to make my life into a long story." It proves that every time he talks, he has a clear goal in mind, either to explain something or end the conversation. It doesn't make what happened any less bad that Felder chose to forget. It doesn't change the fact that he was kicked out of the thing he made. But it does show that getting back to peace in his own mind is more important than getting back to his old place. Following that, he keeps working, performing, and living his life without asking anyone to change the past for him. Heritage of the Left Out. What does Don Felder always talk about when he talks about his work? It's the guitar jam on Hotel California. He knows it, not because he wants to hold on to an old tradition. That song helped the Eagles become famous all over the world. He did it in his own room with a 12-string guitar, without a director or a fancy studio. It was just him and his guitar. Felder didn't write the words to Hotel California, but the melody he sent to Glenn Frey and Don Henley as an instrumental demo became the base for a song that would define an era. It's not an exaggeration for him to say that he's proud of that moment. It's strong enough to stand the test of time. He just says he did the best he could at the time. During his later solo shows, Hotel California was always the last song. Felder played it with the same spirit. Because people came to hear what they remembered, almost every note was played exactly as it was in the first place. It's strange that he never tried to change the solo to make it sound different. As a sign of respect for the work, he thought about leaving the building alone. And for those who listen, people who are not in the crowd also notice him. Even though Felder has a history of fighting, a lot of well-known artists still work with him. That's how his co-workers see it. Looking past the drama to the skill. We have Slash, Joe Satriani, and Steve Lukather. They don't say anything bad about him in the press, but they make new albums with him. That says it all. Felder didn't go to the studio to forget about the past. He went in to keep doing what he thought he was meant to do. Make something that will last after he's gone. Write songs, play guitar, etc. There is no sense of nostalgia on the vault 50 years of music. He's making a statement that he's not stuck with Hotel California or the Eagles, and he doesn't need anyone else to say what he's done is great. Felder doesn't talk much about his old band in the workshops and classes he's taken, but he talks about being consistent instead, about working at your craft for a long time so that you can do something amazing when the chance comes up. For young students, he's not a model of success, but of how to deal with rejection without losing who you are. The news doesn't talk about his success as much as the rest of the Eagles, but that doesn't make it any less important. Felder is a low-key person for many artists. His picture doesn't take over the stage. He takes it with his sound. Felder doesn't want thanks or an invitation to come back when it comes to his place in Eagles history. He told someone in 2025, I'm not waiting for an apology. I did what I needed to do. It's in the music, if it's not on the public record. This is not a defense comment. You have this attitude when you know that time will tell what's real and what's just a trend. Don Felder is 77 years old and doesn't have a record deal, a private jet, or a 3-month tour. He still comes out on stage with his guitar, though, and everyone stands still when he plays. He's not back in the Eagles, but he doesn't need to be. The music he left behind will still be played by millions of people every night, whether he meant for it to be forgotten or not. Feel free to leave a message if what you've heard or read has changed the way you think about music. We want to know what you think. Share this content if you think it's useful, so other people can learn more about a part of rock history that isn't often told in its full. Plus, don't forget to join the channel to never miss another story like this one. Thanks for reading all the way to the end.